Welcome back to another week of Gwent League here. We're not Gwent League, this is LGC League. And for our very first match here, we have Santtu2x versus Kar555. In this very first matchup here, we have an Ardle or a Nilfgaard mirror with Santu's very interesting take on Ardle that is a soldier's mirror tech type of version that we see. How do you think this matchup's going to go, Mr. Spyro?
Well, we've seen matchups or decks like this in the past in tournaments where Nilfgaard typically can be targeted by swarming type of strategies with the likes of soldiers. And I imagine Santtu brought a lineup like this specifically to try have a favorable matchup against other Nilfgaard opponents or decks. And I think for that reason, Santtu probably will be favoring this matchup, although the meta has shifted a lot since then. So we'll have to see how this plays out. But yeah, Santtu looks like he is going for a diplomacy. He finds a Viper Witcher if he wants to take it, which he does end up taking. And I'm interested to see what he gets. He does get his opponent's Toonie Joust out, so not a very good Viper Witcher. If anything, that actually just helps his opponent by thinning his deck. But I guess we'll see how that plays out.
Yeah, and another interesting thing to note here is that Geralt Axii in hand. I think that's a little bit more of an indication that Santtu is indeed trying to target this Nilfgaard matchup. Not allowing this Nilfgaard to ever end up winning, because the only real reason Axii is ever actually good is against Nilfgaard's defender, since that's the only defender that ever actually buffs itself up so that you can get value out of both the Purify and the Reset.
Yeah, so I guess that is another tech for the mirror. As we mentioned, that I believe that for the lineup like this, it looks like Santtu is trying to tech against the mirror, and Axii is actually pretty good in the mirror, because you get both the Purify value and the Reset value, as you mentioned. But yeah, both players just playing some bronzes, playing relatively passively, trying to kind of feel each other out. No one really committing anything just yet. So I'm interested to see how this round one develops, with both players playing very, very passively for now.
Yeah, seeing that battle prep go down onto the Duchess's informant for only 3 points is kind of an indication that Santtu doesn't really want to do anything in this round. Just playing to 7 cards and passing, which is really weird to see Kar end up committing that hefty Helge there. Maybe that means Kar's hand is super good, because everything Santtu's done so far has just indicated that he wants to play to 7 and pass out of the round.
Yeah, it might be that Kar's hand is pretty good, or Kar wants to develop it. I mean, I might have a bunch of tactics in hand, and he's thinking to himself, I'd rather play this hefty Hulk now before I commit the tactics, in case the round does actually end up going the distance and then I lose a lot of hefty Hulk value. But it might also indicate that his hand was just too good at that point. And now we do see another Viper Witcher coming down. Both players trying to like play Gwent the Mill card game, apparently. Viper Witcher after Viper Witcher. And I guess is Santtu able to get another one? Does he have another Duchess in deck? Or with Vigo? Can Vigo find him a Duchess? I wonder. I didn't actually see the whole lineup there.
I'm not entirely sure. I would assume so. Let me double check. There is no Duchess in this list.
Okay, that'll be quite funny if Santtu went for Vigo onto a Duchess for more Viper Witcher action. But yeah, so round 2, I would imagine that Kar would need to bleed, because a long round against soldiers is probably not going to be ideal for Kar. And as we've seen in soldiers, it's a kind of a package type of deck. You really have a lot of packages, and it's vulnerable when the packages get broken up. And I believe Kar would probably want to play this round out and break up packages, although he does play a only 3-point battle prep, which might indicate he wants to pass. What do you think about that, playing the battle prep there?
Maybe he doesn't have that Tourney Joust in hand to be able to answer this hefty Helge, and just is simply saying to himself, like, I can't really play into this hefty Helge. There's no way that's going to ever end up working out for me. So instead, I'm just going to play my bad cards like Battle Prep and pass on 7 when there's no risk of getting card disadvantage.
Taking a long round against a Soldiers deck can be very, very risky, because Soldiers has a lot of value when it gets all of its pieces together. You could almost think of it like an Exodia deck in a way. If it finds all of its pieces, then it can very much just completely steamroll the opponent if they're unable to, deal with the engines, or not the engines, but the packages rather. And we see Santtu is still looking for the he doesn't have the Roderick, he doesn't have the the Vremda or the Council. So it's going to be difficult for him to get full use of this. He does have a mana to try find, or it will find rather, the War Council, but it still doesn't mean he's going to have guaranteed access to his Vremda. He does only need to find either War Council or at least maybe a Roderick, and then he will have a very good chance of being able to get that. So possibly, or probably should I say, Santtu has a good chance of finding it, I think.
We do see that Darlin end up getting molded into a zap there, and Santtu ends up pretty instantly snapping with that hand. He decides that getting that zap is good enough, since that gives him an option to be able to control Kar's Damien or Stefan, since he does run both of them. So he's pretty satisfied with playing this zap. And again, it seems like an additional tech for this matchup really just doesn't want to let this Nilfgaard ever win.
That is an interesting, the Zap is obviously a very, very important card in the mirror due to the fact that you can deal with a Damien or a Stefan. And Zap is honestly, Damien and Stefan is almost a meta-defining, or should I say meta-defining cards right now. A lot of decks right now are running a 1 or even 2 of Zap just to be able to deal with Nilfgaard's Damien and Stefan, as it is a perfect target for Zap to deal with. And we do see Santtu committing the lead ability there to take the opponent's Glynis and then following that up with his Vigo, and that does end up proccing the Glynis twice. Or only wait, why is it? Wait, doesn't it proc it twice? Oh right, he's no Duchess. Never mind. Of course, yeah. I mean no Duchess coming down with that. Only with the leaders. So he will get yoinked back because Kar is playing with a C6, and that does get answered right back.
And now Kar does get the double assimilate proc.
Yeah, because the Duchess coming down. So that's pretty good value for him. However, Santtu does have a lot of value with his soldier packages, and yep, he does find his opponent's Damien. Now, I can't really say because I haven't seen Kar's exact list, but can Kar deal with this Damien?
I'm taking a look at his list, and I don't see any zaps. There is an assassinate, but obviously Santtu did play around that.
Yeah, by putting it in between 2 cards, meaning that the assassination would only do 4 damage right now onto this Damien. So if that Damien goes through, Santtu does have access to his leader ability all over again, which he can utilize in various ways. And looks like Kar is trying to create an answer. Here comes the bribery, and let's see if Kar can find an answer to deal with this Damien out of the bribery.
I don't think there's anything in Santtu's list that can even deal with this, at least not a unit. Obviously, there's the Zap, but bribery can't pull specials, so that isn't exactly a concern for
The
Santtu
interesting
here.
thing is, if Kar found a Damien or a Stefan there, he couldn't actually take it, because if he took it, then Santtu would be able to play his Damien and take it right back. So even if Kar was able to find like a Damien or a Stefan, he wouldn't actually be able to take that as an option, because Santtu would just get his own leader ability, refresh, and then take it back for himself. So it's interesting to see Kar using his leader ability so early like that. And same goes for Santtu. Both players using the leader ability so early when the threat of Damien Stefan still exists.
Yeah. I think it's a little bit less of a concern when both players don't run these 5 provision refreshers in Damien and Stefan. But most of the time, generally speaking, the person that commits their leader ability first in these mirrors usually ends up losing the game. I'm not sure if that's how this one's going to go, since Santtu's list is so obviously teched against Nilfgaard, but that is most of the time what ends up happening.
Yeah, for sure. And we do see quite an interesting situation where Kar actually has, oh boy, so Santtu does end up finding the Vremda, which is pretty good for him. He gets the Vremda coming down for 2, 4, 6, 8, 12-point Vremda, not bad at all. And
Kar did an excellent job of playing around it, though, by stealing all of these Darlins.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite funny to see how many soldiers that Kar actually has. It would have been quite funny if Kar was actually able to find if he played a Stefan and found bribery and then got his own Vremda with that. That'll be the perfect example of how these mirrors can sometimes go with Nilfgaard. But we do see Kar playing his Triss for a diplomacy. And I would imagine that means he doesn't have Stefan due to the fact that he just overwrote his his bribery with a diplomacy.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. And we still see Santtu floating this leader charge, threatening that steal onto a potential Damien or Stefan. And we do see that
boy,
defender come through.
And here comes the tech to deal with it. There we go. Geralt actually finding very, very good value. Both resetting the defender for 10 points of tempo and also removing the defender tag. So very, very good use of oh wow, Kar did actually have the Stefan. So I'm interested to understand. So he actually played the diplomacy to overwrite the bribery, and that's very interesting. Maybe he was trying to play mind games with Santtu there and try to tell Santtu, I don't actually have Stefan. Play your leader ability now. There's no point keeping it.
You do have to keep in mind that Stefan was going to end up getting stolen anyway, and he did have to play that defender before the Stefan no matter what, which always means overriding the Stefan pull with at least a battle prep.
Yeah, I guess that is true. However, maybe Santtu or Kar was trying to bait his opponents, play his leader ability earlier, and then he could play Stefan on a board state even without the defend on the board, just play it open on an empty board state. But looks like Santtu not taking the bait and holding his leader ability for the Stefan there.
And he goes up 1-0 in the series, and we will see what happens in the next game. So in this game 2 here, we have Santtu's his Foltest Commandos versus Kar's Nilfgaard once again, this Yoink 6 with the Damien and the Stefan. And let's see if Santtu's, what we presume to be targeting lineup against this Nilfgaard, continues to work out for him and he's able to actually keep this or prevent this Nilfgaard from winning a game.
Yeah, I mean, Foltest is the kind, or should I say Inspired Zeal is the kind of deck that, again, goes very, very wide, meaning it's quite difficult for Nilfgaard to control very well, because Nilfgaard's the kind of deck that it's good at controlling single units, but it's not as good as controlling, wide units or swarmy type of decks, which is what Santtu's utilizing here, a deck that goes very, very wide and not very susceptible to individual control pieces, which means that Santtu is once again on the upper hand here, and Kar does commit his hefty held, getting immediate board control and using tactical advantage, meaning that I believe in this board state that Kar will very easily be able to take round 1, and I would imagine that Santtu will try to preserve his commander package for round 2 rather, making the bleed much more inefficient for Kar if he is going to go for a bleed strategy, because then he's obviously playing into carryover, and that is obviously not very good for him if he's going to be doing that.
And we did see Santtu get a little bit frustrated at the beginning of this round by not pulling into that moon dust to be able to get a little bit of an efficient trade to that hefty Helge. Obviously, Kar did end up playing around it by playing that tactical advantage, and in open deckless, you would always expect to see that. But Santtu's still a little bit frustrated not seeing that moon dust.
Yeah, I mean, Moondust in this board set obviously wouldn't have really done a whole lot due to the fact that Kar did use tactical advantage, but I believe that on this scenario that this round is pretty much already over at this point, and I believe Santtu is probably going to play
Vigo commit for sure.
Yeah, and Santtu is probably going to be looking to play 3 bad cards and get out and keep the commander package for round 2, meaning that if Kar does choose to bleed, he is going to have to play into the commando thinning plus copying, which means he's going to be getting carryover through it, whilst Kar is going to then potentially go Kar down, and also all the value that Santtu is getting in round 2 is going to potentially be carried over into round 3, making the bleed much more inefficient for Kar if he's going to choose to do that. So I'm going to be interested to see how Kar decides to deal with that in round 2, which I imagine is going to happen very, very soon.
And I wonder if Santtu will continue to perhaps play this Radovid Royal Guards just in an attempt to continue trading up in this round. Because obviously it seems like Santtu's, for the most part, given up on this round 1, but will he? He does. He does choose to continue trying to trade up. Not quite passing yet, because he's confident that this Radovid Royal Guards is probably going to be worse than something that Kar is going to choose to commit here.
Yeah, I'm interested to see what how Santtu makes use of this surrender in this game, due to the fact that Nilfgaard doesn't really play that wide, which means surrender might not get that much value later on. So I'm going to be interested to see if Santtu actually uses it now, because this is actually not bad value. Kar is roast stacked quite a bit, so this surrender value right now is not bad, but it is playing into a round that's pretty much already lost. So I'm going to be interested to see if Santtu does make the trade with the surrender or just take the pass here. He is down by 23 points. So I'd imagine to see that is a pass, and we do see a pass here. And now it's gonna be interesting. I'm very, very curious to see what Kar takes as his approach in round 2. If he's going to try bleed, or if he's going to just rather take the round 3. But if he does take a long round 3, as we mentioned, it is very difficult for Nilfgaard to sufficiently control a swarm deck such as this in a long round. But it is also difficult to bleed against a deck that is playing for so much carryover, as we see with Foltest decks.
Yeah, you know, damned if you do, damned if you don't. This is kind of where Santtu wants his opponents to be with this Nilfgaard list. This lineup that he brought really is trying to just make a Nilfgaard player's job absolutely impossible with winning with that deck against this entire lineup. And we see a Diplomacy grab that Redanian Knight right there. Pretty good Diplomacy. Plays for low tempo, however, assuming that this round is going to be quite long, which you can't really take a long round against this Draug list. You're going to end up getting screwed by lots and lots of Revenants getting swarmed all over the board. So assuming that's going to happen, this Diplomacy is going to end up getting quite a few points for a couple provisions.
So tell me, Bushwook, in this matchup, what do you think what do you think his approach should be in this round 2? How do you think this round 2 would ideally go for Kar if he is going to get an ideal situation through this bleed? What is he hoping to accomplish here?
Ideally, he top decks perfectly in 2-0s. However, that's really hard to do. Because
looking at Santa's hand, he's got a very, very threatening hand if he is going to take. We do see a pass come down for Carl. So basically, Carl's saying to himself, if I push here, all I'm doing is playing into your carryover. So I'm rather going to just try beat you in a long round 3. And that's difficult. It's doable, but it's difficult. Very, very difficult for Nilfgaard to do because, as we mentioned, Inspired Zeal goes very, very wide. And it's very difficult for Nilfgaard to control decks that go wide. But hey, I mean, you got Bribery. You can always, get your own drug, and you can do your own shenanigans. So you always have some win conditions, I guess, as Nilfgaard. You're never quite out of it, but we'll have to see how that one plays out.
Yeah, it definitely still is possible. It seems like Kar didn't top deck super well because had he seen that Defender and that Damien and that Skellen, I imagine we would have seen a very aggressive push in an attempt to actually 2-0, or perhaps even force out the second set of commandos from Santtu here. But instead, we see that pass.
I mean, even if you are going to try push for a 2-0, the problem is if you're not able to 2-0 and your opponent goes into a short round 3 with Roche, you just lose. That's the big risk. And that's probably one of the biggest strengths that Foltest has, is if your opponents do try bleed it and they are not able to 2-0, you end up going into a very short round 3 with an absolutely massive swing with either Roche into commanders or just Royal Decree or whatever into commanders, which is where the biggest strength in this type of deck lies.
The Ardle as well, you have to keep in mind, does have a very potentially strong short round if they do decide that they eventually have to end up bailing and they only end up playing that Damien. They still have a 12-point leader ability. So even though there is quite a bit of carryover, probably a 20 or so point play in the form of commandos if they were to end up getting played in this round 3, the Ardle player does still have plenty of tempo to be able to potentially compete in that sort of situation. So my bet more so is that Kar top decked rather poorly in that round 1 or in that round 2, and it's going to end up costing him by losing quite a bit of value simply because, or not denying a lot of value from Santtu's side here, because this Draug is going to absolutely stomp all over this long round here.
Unless Kar can sufficiently, eliminate all the human targets or many of them to mitigate the Draug value, which he is doing quite well. He did kill both the commanders, meaning that Santtu can no longer copy them. And we do see Santtu copying, his blue stripes with other blue stripes, which is obviously irrelevant, but due to the fact that the commander's got answers, he's got another choice. And if Kar is able to sufficiently kill all the humans, we could see a very weak Draug potentially, but that's going to require a lot of control coming down from Kar, and I don't know if he's going to answer all these humans well enough to be able to do that.
And something interesting here is Kar is pretty much only allowed to be able to kill these commandos because Santtu decided to commit that Pavetta on that early pass in round 2. Because if Santtu still had that Pavetta as a threat, even if it was just in deck or something, Kar would not be allowed to actually play to kill these commandos because of the whole situation of the Pavetta.
Yeah, that is very true. However, we do see Kar, finding the good old bribery into Drag there, which is obviously pretty good for him. However, the board state wasn't quite developed enough for this to have been as threatening as it could have been. But still, not a bad Drag. Unfortunately, does get answered for Kar. But had that Drag have come down a few turns later, that could have been potentially game winning for Kar, getting his own Drag on a more developed board state.
Yeah, and it does seem like Santtu is kind of just taking out lots of units here. For the most part, just taking away from his own surrender value. However, if there's nothing on the board and your surrender's not able to get points because there's nothing on the board, I can't imagine you're going to be very angry as Santtu here.
Yeah, unless your opponent's playing a very, very tall type of deck, such as like a monster deck that's going very, very tall, then you only need a few, tall units to actually get good value in the monster decks. However, that's not the case in this matchup, and we do see him committing the drug now, and that's 4 revenants on the board, 4 threats. I can't imagine Kar is going to be able to deal with very well. He can play his leader to steal one of them, which is good for him. But how is he going to deal with the other 3? That is the question. I don't think he quite can. Can he? Have we seen a Swears been played this game yet? I don't think we have. Have we?
I don't remember.
I don't believe we have seen Swears. So Swears could also potentially steal another Revenant after it gets refreshed and turn into another 3-point Revenant. So we might still see a Swears. So Kar is using his leader ability to steal the 1 Revenant, and now he's playing Marching Orders, and he's going to be able to copy a Revenant of his own. However, the bad part about this for Kar is he's putting a Dutch informant on his opponent's side of the board, meaning that Santtu will be able to basically eat the Duchess with his own Revenants, and basically use the self-pinging to his own advantage here, and which is exactly what we're seeing from Santtu.
And he takes out both of his ones. Cannibalistic Santtu coming through. Taking out his own board and leaving the charge on the 7-point Revenant, obviously, in an attempt to prevent that from getting controlled. Just a little bit of a micro play that's optimizing Santtu's chances of winning here.
Yeah, I mean, the 7-point Revenant is much safer than a 3-point Revenant would be, so there's no reason to actually use that charge right now until he is ready to actually find value with that. So Santtu has 3 Revenants. He could actually use all 3 Revenant pings to kill his opponent's active Revenant, but unfortunately for him, Kar does not play the Swears, so now Kar has 2 Revenants of his own. But I mean, the game is quite close. Both players have
the surrender is going to go through, and Santtu's going to be able to absolutely farm these ones on Kar's side at this point.
Yeah, that is some pretty good value coming down with the surrender. Only playing for 6 points of tempo, however, setting up all these Revenants is a pretty big deal for Santtu, and he chooses not to use the last Revenant ping. I believe he obviously just wants to keep that protected on the higher point body, and now comes down the Selkirk to deal the Damien, and that is going to be game 2 with Santtu going 2-0 up in this best of 5 series.
And again, it's that situation that we've been talking about where Kar just isn't able to do anything here because he ultimately is just getting teched against. This Nilfgaard list is not designed to win against Santtu's lineup, and he's really suffering from it right now.
Yeah, it's not able to deal with decks that go wide very well.
So, yeah, that is the end of game 2. Santtu is up 2-0. Let's see what happens in game 3. So, this is game 3 of the Santtu versus Kar series, and Santtu is up 2-0 versus Kar here. We are now seeing a Mystic Echo Dwarves versus Kar's Nilfgaard once again. And this is really the story of, can Kar get this Nilfgaard through? Because like we've been saying this whole series, Santtu did bring a lineup that is made to not lose to Nilfgaard, and Kar's really just desperately trying to get this Nilfgaard to win. And we'll see if he's able to actually find success in this matchup.
Once again, we do see Santtu bringing a this is a very dwarf is it's a bit different than the other decks, but it's still a swarmy type of deck. It does go very, very wide, and it has a lot of things that you can't exactly answer very efficiently as a Nilfgaard player due to the fact that you normally are more focused on removing bigger threats rather than all these little threats that you see with dwarfs. But dwarfs, I mean, it can be, there are some tipping points. It can be difficult sometimes if you're not able to answer your opponent's defender as Nilfgaard. The game can completely spiral out of control if the Nilfgaard player is able to actually get the defender to stick and then get the Stefan and Damien to go through. So if Santtu is actually unable to find his Ida, which I don't think it will be happen because he does have the Call of the Forest to find if he needs it, but there are tipping points this matchup where it can go very, very wrong for the dwarf player potentially. But for the most part, I think dwarfs is generally favored here.
Yeah, for sure. There definitely is always lose conditions against Nilfgaard simply because bribery is fun. But it is probably going to be rather favored for Santtu here, especially when he's drawing his cards.
And Santtu once again taking an early pass, passing at 7. Every game we've seen this from Santtu, always taking the early pass and giving his opponent control of the game very, very quickly. What do you think about that line of play here? Just giving up the round so easily.
Well, I'm kind of surprised at how little or how much tempo was actually ending up getting played there. I didn't think Santtu was actually not committing a lot. It seemed like he was planning on continuing to play in there. But that's kind of just dwarfs getting lots of value on really low provision cards. But
yeah,
I'm not really sure why he's passing so early, but it's obviously worked out well for him so far, and we'll see how it works out for him here.
And Santtu is pretty happy with that mulligans. He ended up finding his Justice in his last draw there, which I imagine is pretty good for him, as Justice is pretty much the most important card in this dwarfs deck. And as we've seen in the past, Justice is actually such an important card that games can be completely lost in themselves if you don't find the Justice. It's a very, very important card, and without any reliable tutors for it, it can be very, very make or break for the deck if you are unable to find it. But luckily for Santtu, he does find the Justice, and we do see him utilizing Justice right now. Interesting, he's playing this Justice at 9 cards, or 10 cards rather, before we've crossed the 7 card threshold. Does give his opponent a potential pass. However, I guess Santu's mindset is if you pass here, you're going to lose anyway. So I'm going to play this now. And if you don't pass here, I'd rather get these engines done early.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I don't think Kar is going to be very happy taking a long round unless Santtu ends up committing that first Justice and then uses his leader ability. I can't imagine Kar is going to be very happy passing anytime soon.
Yeah, and Kar does get his own engine done with the Glynis, and we do see marching orders into his Fifon, meaning the defender is now down, and that is a very, very threatening, because if Santtu is unable to deal with this, which he can obviously because of Call of the Forest onto Ida, but if he wasn't able to deal with it theoretically, that he would absolutely be able to do some crazy things with his leader ability, Damien and Stefan, which we've seen time and time again in Nilfgaard. Nilfgaard is a very, very interesting matchup sometimes, because if you are unable to deal with their cards, games can completely spiral out of control very, very quickly, in the blink of an eye almost. So luckily for Santtu, is able to deal with this, meaning he will have answers for Damien and Stefan potentially, and we will see how Kar decides to proceed with this now that his defender is answered.
Yeah, we see these charges getting floated on these mercenaries.
It's a bit risky to Swears, isn't it? A little bit, I guess, but nothing good for him to hit right now with all the arm on the board.
Yeah, there's not really much that Santtu can be doing with these charges, and choosing to float them in favor of being able to take out some of Kar's potential engines seems to be Santtu's plan here.
And we do see Kar playing the Menno into War Council into Swears, and he does end up taking his opponent's mercenary. And Santtu, I guess, going to clean that right up with. Oh, nope. Okay, he's going to rather transform his rowdy dwarfs into berserkers and getting more engine power down first. And that's exactly what happens here. And it looks like Santtu is very, very close to actually overcoming his opponent's score. And if once he overcomes his opponent's score, I'm not sure if Kar will be able to get his card back.
Yeah, Santtu definitely does have a lot of points. This dwarfs list does kind of just spam points, and it spams buffering as well. And we will probably see a turning point in this round where Santtu just barely gets ahead, and then Kar is no longer going to be able to actually get back in front of Santtu again, simply because of the amount of points that this deck is just going to end up putting down per turn.
And interesting enough, he was initially thinking about taking out that that berserker, but then he opted to take out the Vigo instead. Both are engines. However, the killing the Vigo is actually playing for more immediate tempo, whereas killing the the Berserker is also blamed for killing an engine, but it's not as immediate in terms of value. However, both pings of the Berserkers do end up hitting armor, meaning that Santtu is not quite able to tempo ahead just yet. Carl not taking this pass, and it's very risky because, as you mentioned, once Santtu actually gets ahead, I don't think he'll not be.
Talented bribery coming through, pulling that Zoltan Warrior.
Yeah.
That's one of the better things you can hit. Obviously, behind something like
that.
Tree.
Yeah, can't forget about the good old bribery into Oak, the mythical bribery into Tree.
And we see these engines continuing to just tick away. Santtu is down by a pretty wide margin, and unfortunately for him, he's not able to actually play this Gabor for carryover to be able to take this round anymore. He will probably just end up taking with this guard, however, assuming Kar was to pass here.
The interesting thing about that bribery commitment, meaning it might signal that Kar is looking to play his Stefan this round, but obviously in this board state it will get killed by Oak most likely. However, because once the bribery is committed, it is important to note that Stefan only lets you reutilize a tactic that was played in the round that he is played in as well. Meaning that if we do go to round 3, it seems that obviously we'll go to round 3, but when we do go to round 3, if Stefan only comes down round 3, it will no longer be able to utilize that bribery due to the fact that it was played in round 2.
And Santtu's 1 point away from being able to take with this Gabor here. It would feel pretty bad if Kar was to take this pass, because you're just so close to being able to get 5 additional points in that round 3.
Yeah, I imagine both players are keeping that in account, and I imagine Kar is also doing the math on that and keeping in mind Gabor and trying to make sure that he stays out of reach of Gabor. So I can't imagine that Kar will give Santtu an opportunity to play Gabor for carryover. We might see a pass come down soon, which we do, and it looks like the Mahakam Guard will just quite easily be able to take this 9-point Mahakam Guard, even after the nerf. Such a strong card in a long round 3 for Dwarfs.
Long round in general.
Yeah, long round in general, yeah. Long round, Guard playing for 9 points. Potentially, it can go up to 10 points, I believe. Mm-hmm. And, I mean, that's just an insane value for a bronze card. Even after the nerf, still a pretty threatening card in a long round.
Santtu didn't top deck perfectly here, but he does still seem to have a little bit of power. He has that Gabor that's going to end up playing for 8 points, unless he's going to play the Merc first. And obviously that Tree is going to play for quite a few points.
Yeah, I mean, the Gabor coming down or the Mercenary, either way, it's going to play for 1 additional point. However, the Gabor is immune, so that point is guaranteed, whereas the Mercenary, not guaranteed. But I guess Santtu is valuing the potential removal value of that Mercenary over the extra point on the Gabor. Santtu does, of course, have his leader ability still available, which he's going to utilize, I would imagine, onto the Berserkers. But the only thing about that is the round is relatively short, meaning the Berserkers aren't going to play for, max value in such a short round 3. Is there any other targets that Santtu still has to
He could go Call of the Forest into Defender. That gives 1 additional body for Tree, as well as additional dwarfs for his other dwarf synergy, but we'll see here. He decides to go for the Justice into Berserkers.
Okay, I see why, because this allows him to play Skirmish and kill the Stefan.
True. That is very true.
And that is a very, very efficient way to deal with Stefan over here.
And same thing can be said about Damien if that was going to end up getting committed next, since the Tree can now do 3 damage.
Yeah, pretty efficient answer for Stefan. And Kar now obviously going to be in a very difficult spot. He doesn't even actually have a good leader target. What is Kar going to steal with his leader ability on this board state?
He's probably going to end up stealing this Berserker and more buffering. He's going to steal this Berserker probably, since that is going to deny 2 points of engine value off of Santtu's side and give Kar 2 engine points on his side, unless it hits the armor, which is a bit unfortunate.
I guess this allows him to play his Damien now safely. Damien cannot die on this board state, which means that it will be able to. Kar will be able to reutilize his leader ability, but he's just down by so many points. I'm not sure if it really matters here. What's his last card going to be? He gets an additional 8 points, and 9 points if you want to count the ping from the armor. So he
could be close. Oh, not quite there. It is 1 point away. Wow, that game was really close.
Yeah, that was a very, very close game. Closer than what I thought it would be, honestly. That matchup is, I believe, unfair for Carl. So the fact that it was actually such a close game and with such a bad last card, very, very close. And that could have gone either way, honestly.
Yeah, I am super surprised that Carr managed to compete in that game as well as he did. Very smart plays coming from Carr there, trying to allow his Damien to live and getting a lot of leader value there, especially on that second yoink, being able to take away that um, Berserker once again. And I believe if he high rolled just a little bit more and the ping hit the Gabor instead of the armor on the Berserker when he used his first yoink, he could have actually tied or won there. So
I can't remember the exact board step, but yeah, that was a very, very close game. And unfortunately, we do see a 3-0 series in favor of Santtu, and that is going to finish up that game.
yeah, congratulations, Santtu, winning once again. Surprise, surprise. I believe he's flawless so far in the league, although I'm not entirely sure on that one. Very good player, continuing to win games.